You start noticing little things first. She's on her phone more often. She laughs at texts she won't show you, and somehow, her mood changes without explanation. One moment she's cold, distant, distracted. The next, she's overly nice, almost trying to hide something with extra affection. You tell yourself it's just stress, maybe work, maybe life. But deep down, something in your gut whispers that another man's influence is quietly shaping her. Not necessarily physically, but emotionally, mentally. And that's where it starts. Most men don't realize this. Control doesn't always mean cheating. Sometimes it's emotional control, subtle, invisible, but powerful enough to shift how she sees you. You see, women are deeply emotional creatures. When a woman starts responding to another man's energy, his validation, his opinions, his attention, her emotional compass begins to tilt toward him. She may still love you, but she's no longer anchored by you. You'll see it in the way she reacts when you speak. She hesitates before agreeing, questions your choices, or subtly compares you to someone else. And often she doesn't even notice she's doing it. But you do. You feel that gap growing, and it eats away at your confidence because it feels like you're losing something you can't name. It often begins when your connection weakens. Maybe you got busy. Maybe you stopped paying attention to the emotional side of your marriage. Not because you stopped caring, but because life got heavy. And in that silence, another man stepped in. Maybe a coworker, maybe a friend, maybe someone she confides in online. He listens, validates, and suddenly, she's smiling differently. Her tone changes when she talks about him. Softer, more alive. You notice, but when you bring it up, she says you're imagining things. Yet her body language tells the truth, and she's no longer fully yours emotionally. There are 5 clear signs when this shift happens, and once you see them, you can't unsee them. The first one is emotional withdrawal. She stops sharing her thoughts, her frustrations, her dreams with you. Instead, she becomes quiet, guarded. She says, nothing's wrong. But her silence feels like a wall you can't climb. She used to come to you for comfort. Now she deals with her emotions elsewhere. That's a sign another man's influence has entered her emotional world. The second sign is emotional defensiveness. Every time you try to talk about the distance, she gets irritated, as if you're accusing her of something. She may even flip the script, making you feel guilty for simply wanting to understand what's going on. That's a defense mechanism. Not because she's guilty of betrayal, but because she knows deep down that her emotions are shifting. And the man who has her attention might be offering her what she once expected from you: validation, safety, attention. When a woman starts to emotionally detach from her husband, her subconscious looks for another source of emotional energy. That's how emotional control begins. Slowly, invisibly, and without physical contact. And here's the hardest part. Once it starts, it doesn't stop easily, because emotional addiction is real. It's the reason why even a text from that other man can lift her mood instantly, while your presence feels heavy or demanding to her. It's not about love fading. It's about her being pulled by a different emotional gravity. You can sense it when you look into her eyes and they don't mirror back that same warmth you once saw. When you talk, she listens, but not with her heart. When you touch her, she doesn't melt like she used to. It's subtle but painful. You start asking yourself, what happened to us? But what you really need to ask is, who's influencing her energy? Because once you see that, you'll start understanding the deeper psychology behind this emotional shift. Here's what most men don't realize. Emotional control isn't something a woman consciously chooses. It's something she slips into when her emotional needs aren't being met in her relationship. When she starts feeling unseen, unheard, or emotionally dismissed, her mind opens a door, often without even knowing it. And if another man happens to walk through that door with the right energy, confident, attentive, validating, she starts to feel emotionally understood again. That's the most dangerous stage because it's not about attraction at first. It's about connection. But connection always leads to attachment. And attachment leads to emotional dependence. The third sign you'll notice is subtle, but powerful. Her opinions start changing. Suddenly, the things she once agreed with you on, she questions them. Her tone shifts when you share your thoughts, and she might say things like, "Not everyone thinks that way," or "You don't get it." Those aren't random phrases. They're signs of mental influence. When a woman emotionally connects with another man, his ideas begin shaping her perspective. You'll notice her repeating phrases or using expressions that aren't hers, and they're his. It's like she's carrying his energy in her words. The fourth sign is even harder to ignore: comparison. It might not always be direct, but it's there in her reactions, her sarcasm, her disappointment. She'll compare how you communicate, how you dress, how you handle stress. And what she's really comparing is how she feels around you versus how she feels when she thinks of him. When another man makes her feel emotionally alive, she starts measuring you through that lens. Not because she wants to replace you, but because her emotional chemistry is responding to him more than to you. And once that happens, every interaction with you becomes filtered through that imbalance. Then comes the fifth and most painful sign: emotional secrecy. This is when she starts protecting that other emotional bond. She hides her chats, locks her phone, becomes vague about where she's been. But more than the physical secrecy, it's emotional secrecy that hurts most. She hides her feelings, not just her actions. You can sense it when she's texting late but smiling faintly, or when she's sitting next to you yet feels miles away. It's that quiet detachment that tells you there's someone else influencing her emotions. Here's what's crucial to understand. This isn't just about another man being better. It's about energy. Women are drawn to emotional energy the way men are drawn to physical beauty. If she feels emotionally alive with someone, she'll chase that feeling, even if she doesn't act on it physically. That's the part most men miss. They think, she hasn't cheated, so we're fine. But emotional loyalty breaks long before physical loyalty ever does. And once that emotional control takes root, it starts showing in her behavior toward you. She becomes colder, more dismissive. You'll feel like no matter what you say or do, it doesn't reach her. That's because her emotional validation no longer comes from you, it comes from him. And when that happens, every argument, every silence, every small misunderstanding becomes amplified. Because you're not just fighting her words, you're fighting the emotional echo of another man's influence inside her mind. But here's the part that most men never realize. You can reclaim that connection. You can shift the dynamic back in your favor. It doesn't happen by confronting her or accusing her. That only pushes her further away. It happens by reawakening the part of her that once felt safe, seen, and emotionally anchored in you. And once you do that, you start breaking the emotional bond she unknowingly built elsewhere. When a woman starts emotionally slipping away, most men panic. They argue, chase, or demand explanations. And in doing so, they unknowingly confirm her emotional distance. But here's the truth that very few understand. The moment you start chasing her emotional validation, you give her more power and yourself less presence. The key isn't to fight for her attention, it's to become the man whose energy demands it naturally. Because attraction, especially with women, doesn't respond to pressure, as it responds to gravity. Think about it. When you first met her, she was drawn to something unspoken about you. Maybe it was your calmness, your quiet confidence, or that steady masculine energy that didn't try to impress her. That was your emotional gravity. But over time, when you started prioritizing keeping the peace over keeping your frame, that gravity weakened. She stopped feeling emotionally guided by you and started feeling emotionally responsible for you. That shift, when she feels she's leading emotionally instead of following your lead, is when she becomes vulnerable to other emotional influences. One of the most powerful psychological triggers in women is emotional leadership. A woman doesn't want a man who controls her, and she wants a man whose presence centers her. That's why the men who quietly command respect, not through dominance, but through direction, always seem to draw women in effortlessly. When you stand firm in who you are, she subconsciously calibrates her emotions around your energy. But when you start bending your values or walking on eggshells to keep her happy, she senses emotional weakness. And emotional weakness always kills attraction. So how do you reclaim that power when another man has already started influencing her emotions? You don't do it by fighting for her attention. You do it by reclaiming your focus. When she sees you grounded, not reactive, not trying to prove your worth, she feels that shift. Suddenly, she's the one wondering what changed. Because nothing unsettles a woman who's emotionally drifting more than a man who's emotionally calm. That calmness makes her realize something powerful, that she's losing the connection not because you need her less, but because you've stopped chasing what was never meant to be begged for in the first place: respect. You'll start to notice something fascinating when you realign your focus. Her energy shifts again. She becomes curious. She starts testing you, asking where you're going, why you're quieter, why you seem different. That's her emotional mind trying to pull back what it once had control over. But this time, don't give her reassurance. Give her presence. Speak less, mean more. When she asks, "Are you mad?" simply say, "No, I'm just thinking." That line alone rebalances the power dynamic and because you're no longer emotionally predictable. See, the real attraction isn't built on constant attention. It's built on emotional uncertainty. Not toxic games, but a calm unpredictability that keeps her emotionally alert around you. That's what creates tension. The good kind. When she doesn't know exactly how you'll respond, her emotional mind stays engaged. And that's when she starts thinking about you again, even when she's with him. Because women are drawn not just to comfort, but to emotional stimulation. And no one stimulates a woman's emotions like a man who moves with quiet confidence, who doesn't chase, but also doesn't flinch when tested. If she's been under another man's emotional influence, you don't need to compete with him. You need to outgrow him. Because once your energy becomes too grounded, too self-assured, and too centered, she'll start realizing that what she had with him was temporary excitement, but what she's missing with you is emotional depth. And women always return to depth. They crave safety that still feels alive, and that's exactly what emotional maturity creates. But before you can rebuild that dynamic with her, you must first rebuild it within yourself. That's where most men fail. Like, they try to fix her behavior before fixing their own energy. But the truth is, your emotional tone sets the entire rhythm of the relationship. And once you master that, she won't just notice the change, she'll feel it. Here's where everything changes, the part most men don't want to hear but need to. When a woman begins acting distant, guarded, or emotionally detached, the biggest mistake you can make is to interpret her behavior only through logic. Because women don't detach logically, they detach emotionally first. Long before she stops talking to you, she's already stopped feeling you. And that emotional disconnect doesn't happen overnight. It starts the moment she feels that another man, whether through conversation, confidence, or energy, understands her in ways you no longer do. That's why the real competition isn't between you and another man. It's between your old energy and your new presence. When your energy feels uncertain, she'll look for stability elsewhere. But when you embody calm dominance, quiet assurance, and a deep understanding of yourself, she'll find herself emotionally pulled back toward you, even if she doesn't understand why. Because female psychology operates through emotional contrast. She needs to feel something that reminds her of who you were when she first fell for you, not the version who's been reacting, defending, or explaining. You see, attraction at its core is not about perfection. It's about polarity, the balance of masculine and feminine energy. When you reclaim your polarity, you reclaim her attention. Women are naturally drawn to men who can provide emotional safety without surrendering their emotional control. That's why setting boundaries is so powerful. Not because you're limiting her, but because you're defining yourself. Boundaries are masculine structure. And structure is what creates emotional freedom for women. When a woman knows where you stand, she can finally relax into her feminine energy again. But let's get real for a second. Sometimes it's not just about her being under another man's influence. Sometimes it's about her losing trust in your masculine strength. When she sees you hesitate, when you second-guess yourself, when you constantly seek reassurance, she feels emotionally unprotected. And the moment a woman doesn't feel safe in your presence, she subconsciously begins searching for safety somewhere else. It's not always physical cheating. Sometimes it's emotional. A man at work who listens, a friend who makes her laugh, someone who seems in tune with her feelings. But what she's really craving isn't the other man. It's the feeling she once got from you. The most powerful way to reverse that is to reconnect with your grounded masculine frame. Stop reacting. Stop explaining. Stop trying to prove your worth. Every time you explain yourself to win her approval, you lose more of her respect. Instead, let silence become your strength. Let mystery become your weapon. When she questions your calmness, when she wonders what's changed, That's when you've already begun shifting the dynamic, because now she's thinking about you again. Not the old version of you who chased validation, but the new version who doesn't need to be understood to be respected. Remember this: a woman can sense your internal state long before you say a word. Your energy speaks louder than your voice ever could. When your energy says, "I know who I am, with or without you," it activates something deep within her, something primal. She starts remembering the man she was once proud to stand beside, not the man she pitied. And when she feels that again, the influence of any other man fades fast, because no one can compete with a man who's at peace with himself. That's the paradox of attraction. The less you chase control, the more control you have. The moment you stop trying to win her back and start focusing on rebuilding your masculine essence, her mind begins to circle back to you. She starts to miss the way you made her feel safe without needing her validation. That's emotional mastery. And that's what truly separates men who lose women from those who make women fall for them over and over again.